What's up, dude?
Hey,
How are
can
you
you hear
doing?
me?
I can. So sorry if there's like a
Awesome.
huge glare. Sometimes I look at the video and I realize like there's a glare on my glasses and it looks like they're just bright shining. But I had someone tell me during one of my first episodes that I need to turn a light on because if I don't, it kind of gets backlit. And so I have, yeah. Do you have wings on?
Do I have the wings
Oh,
on?
oh, it's your chair. I thought you had like the way they were coming out from over your shoulders. I thought you had like furry wings on. I was like, all right, haven't seen that. I haven't seen that yet. Bold move, but all right.
Victoria's Secret wings?
Yeah, I was like, okay. Well, because I see the butterflies too, and I was like, okay, all right. I can work with this. I'll try. Um, all right, dude. So yeah. So as I tell everyone, aside from a few friends, I don't know anyone that I have on. This is for everyone that's listening. I kind of just gloss over, see someone interesting, whether in the Air Force or whether in your case, powerlifting, and looks cool. Obviously, ask if they'd like to do a podcast. You were cool enough to say yeah. And I don't like to dig any deeper than that. I like to find out as I go. So, yeah, I never have any prepared questions. I like for it to just be a conversation between two strangers and see what happens. So, introduce yourself.
So I'm Mel's Moves on IG, which is how you've come to know me. I'm in a master's program, exercise science. I'm a powerlifting coach. I have a company I started in 2015, A-Team Athletics. So mostly powerlifting athletes, some and I also work with different types of strength athletes. I work with bodybuilders, things of that nature. And yeah, that's pretty much a summary of me. I'm a USPA coach, ref. I mean, I have so much going on. I wouldn't know where to start and where to finish, but
All right, well,
I like to be as involved with the community as I can, and I really enjoy it.
so yeah, I've seen on your Instagram what does CSCS stand for?
Certified Strength and Conditioning, considered like one of the better certifications to get if you're a strength coach. It requires a bachelor's degree, and I was actually really impressed with the test. It was pretty difficult because when you go into it, they say, there's for each question there's 3 possible choices. So even if you were to guess, you have a 1 in 3 chance of getting it right. But those questions were tough. I was really impressed by it. Really? So I have more respect now for people who have it than when I first went into it, because it was intense.
What made you want to get into that? Is there any particular draw, or was it one of those things that just kind of one thing led to another, and one day you're just like, oh, this is what I'm doing?
Actually, kind of exactly what you said. I just kind of happened to be at the right place at the right time and had the right conversation. Me for powerlifting, talking to one of my colleagues about this, and specifically about what personalities are drawn to powerlifting. And it seems like people who tend to be more analytical like to do based, and either you get it or you don't, and it's not really subjective like bodybuilding. So if you're doing better or not based on how you're performing. Yeah. So I thought that was really cool, and it kind of rings true, because a lot of the people who do really they seem to be more numbers oriented, like accountants, nurses, people like that who have those types of jobs really gravitate toward powerlifting. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I never would have thought about that, but it kind of makes sense, because with bodybuilding, or I guess like those 2 friends I showed you, they're more in aesthetics, and that's, I don't know how you would judge that without using like one of those. What's the gold standard for fat testing? Aren't you like, was it
DEXA or bod pod?
Yeah, I did
or
one.
Hydrostatic weighing.
I did one when I was at the University of Georgia in 2013. I remember one of our teachers was getting her, I think, master's in kinesiology. Yeah, and we did something where it like scanned us head to toe over like 5 minutes and told you exactly how fat you were, basically. But yeah, something like aesthetics or men's physique, I feel like that's really the only way you could nail down exactly what you're doing. Because other than that, I mean, what would you be doing? You'd be looking at pictures before and after. It depends on the lighting, depends on how much water you've drank, depends. Is it after a workout? Are you pumped up, or have you been eating Cheetos all weekend and you're retaining like an extra 15 pounds of water, which is kind of where I am right now. Versus with powerlifting, yeah, you can really break that down into, I mean, literally break it down into how much more am I lifting. Yeah, that's kind of, I never would have thought about that. What are numbers you would track doing powerlifting? Like how often would you just choose a random workout? Or I guess, okay, you're the professional in this. How do you track numbers? What numbers do you track? Like, is it just how much can I curl today? How much can I curl tomorrow? Or is there a certain average of like all numbers you would do for biceps or for squats or for lats? Or you tell me.
Okay, so the sport of powerlifting is basically 3 movements. It's the squat, bench, and deadlift. So for competition purposes, when you go to compete, you get 3 tries or 3 attempts to lift the heaviest weight possible for each of those movements. So first they start with squat. You squat your first attempt, you give them your second attempt, and you're in a flight of anywhere from 8 to 15 people. And after everybody does their first attempts, everybody gets a second try for a second attempt and then a third. And then they repeat that for bench and deadlift as well. And then they sum those numbers up to get a total. And then the total and your body weight is used to basically level the playing field, so you can compare people who are smaller to people who are larger. And basically whoever gets the highest Wilks score, which we can kind of, I don't want to get too far into what that is or anything like that. But basically whoever gets the highest total wins for their class, for their division. And then whoever has the highest Wilks score wins best lifter for male and female. So for a workout, you usually center your training around the squat, bench, and deadlift. So we do, right now, it's really popular to do higher frequency. So instead of doing the traditional once a week squat, once a week bench, etc., you see powerlifters who squat multiple times a week, bench multiple times a week, often even deadlift multiple times a week. And they include variations of the movement. So depending on how close you are to competing, you'd be more specific with your movements. So you do more competition movements. And the farther you are away from a competition or the farther into off-season, you would have more variations. So you'd have front squats or close grip bench or incline bench and Romanian deadlift, things like that. And there's hundreds of variations of each of the movements. So depending on what weaknesses are, what you're trying to work on, what you're good program in that way, so that you can, when you get to competition, you could be prepared for it. Okay.
And so, all right, so my mom runs marathons. She's gonna live forever, but yeah, when she's training for a marathon, it's kind of, I think this is kind of what you were saying. It's obviously she doesn't run that much every day, and as you get closer to a marathon, start running more and more and more, and you have bigger and bigger, I guess, prep days. So is that what it's like? It's, you kind of have this. It's almost like a funnel. It's the farther away you are, you're doing a bunch of different stuff, but it's all kind of the same movement. And obviously I don't need to explain this to you because you're the one that just explained it to me, but I talk out loud to try to like see it. So you're doing a bunch of different movements, and it's, it'd be like, let's say you're preparing for like a free throw shooting contest or something. You would, months away, you'd be doing jump shots, 3-pointers, layups, whatever. You might dunk it, whatever. And as you're getting closer, you're narrowing it down to, you'd want to be that certain distance from the goal. And then you'd want to do feet planted only. And eventually you would get down, leading right up to it. You're just doing that one movement. Is that correct?
Yeah, so all sports basically work that way, where you have increased training specificity the closer you get to your competition. It's for team sports, football, soccer, basketball, any sport that you could think of, you get more and more specific because you want to mimic possible, versus you can't always do the competition movement because then you'll develop weakness you're not working, and so that could lead to injury or decreases in performance. So all sports work pretty much exactly the same way, but since for a marathon runner, different energy systems, so obviously it's going to be different for them. But I don't think there are very many sports that wouldn't be helped with some weight training included in their off season. So even marathon runners, I actually have a lot of my clients who do hybrid training. So they'll do marathons, they'll do powerlifting, or some combination. They enjoy running or what have you, but they still enjoy powerlifting. And those are kind of opposites in a way.
Yeah.
So the way we kind of work around that, I think that they can help each other, but the strength training helps the running more than the running helps the strength training, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So usually if I have someone who's strictly been doing marathons and comes to me and does weight training, they will decrease their marathon time. They will decrease their fatigue, just by having that extra muscle mass, being able to carry themselves so much more easily.
That's crazy. I would have never thought of marathon runners about that. You always see like sprinters in the Olympics, and yet, they're built like Greek gods. And then, you see the long distance runner, and it's much more like, it looks like the wind could take them away. That's crazy, though. I never thought about powerlifting. It's
interesting. Yeah. So it's interesting you say that, the difference in their physiques, and that is all based around energy systems. Because if you're, I don't know how much your viewers are going to be familiar with energy systems, but we basically have three main ones. So one of them for like high intensity, short burst or activity, one of them for the lower intensity, like walking, day-to-day activities, and then one that's like a combination, right? So when you have people who do the longer distance, slow paced stuff, they utilize more fat for energy. So it's kind of, there's different ways that people manipulate this to sell fad diets and stuff, or fad training programs. But they say, oh, well, if you're using fat as your energy source, then it's good to do that training. But what happens is your body becomes really good at storing fat because it knows that it's going to need the fat.
Yeah.
So you end up not being as lean, versus if you're a sprinter and you're not using fat as your energy source, your main energy source, your body's going to say, I don't need fat because I need to be able to move really fast through space. So I'm going to be really lean, so I can move faster, and then I don't even need that fat as energy. So that's why they become kind of lean. So you kind of see how the whole energy system thing works when you get to those elite levels of like, why does their body look like that? Because that's the efficient way to look for you to perform that specific movement that way.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
That is. Don't you also develop, like, I know there's different muscle fibers, but don't you develop like what kind of like anaerobic versus aerobic, I guess, an energy system? I have a degree in biology, but I graduated 7 years ago, so I'm trying to recall it. But it's if you look at, don't they look at like, they can look at like the cell of like a weightlifter. Oh God, I'm trying to remember it. But it has a much higher concentration of, I can't even remember, versus aerobic is. My professors are ashamed of me.
So let me cut you off and help you out here.
Yeah.
So I actually got my undergrad in biology as well.
Oh, cool. All right.
And I think I got mine 7 years ago too. So we're probably around the same age.
Okay, cool.
But so what you're thinking of is aerobic and anaerobic. So aerobic meaning the more oxidative, fat utilizing, and it's correlated with type 1 muscle fibers, which are the slow twitch muscle fibers, versus the anaerobic, which is the fast twitch muscle fibers. I think that's what you're thinking of, type 1 and type 2.
Yeah.
Right? So depending on what type of muscle fibers you have genetically, or what you're predisposed to, you might perform better in one or the other. And then you can also train to kind of change your muscle fiber type, supposedly. So, or some muscle fiber types can be swayed in one direction versus another, depending on how you're training. So
yeah, that's exactly.
Was that what you're referring to?
That's exactly what I was trying to say. Dude, I was obsessive with it, and I've said it every podcast because apparently I always need to blow my ego. I got into medical school out of college, but I decided not to go. But I was very much I wasn't learning it like apparently you did. I was learning very much how to answer questions, like the antithesis of education. You know, I was learning how to regurgitate because I was like, I need to answer these questions in this amount of time to get in. But yeah, it's talking to you. I now realize no one else has a biology major that I've talked to, and now talking to you, I realized I was like, oh my God, I've forgotten everything. I've forgotten everything.
Well, don't be so hard on yourself because I don't remember anything from undergrad, but all of this stuff is information that I basically got a refresher on with my master's degree.
Yeah.
Because I'm finishing I took all my classes for my master's. I'm just finishing up my thesis. And basically all we talk about are energy systems because it relates to what we do for sports. So, I mean, I learned about marine life and plant biology, and I don't remember a thing.
Yeah.
I can't even remember the common names for most of this stuff. So
mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and
right.
Plant cells have a cell wall. That's all I got. But yeah. So what is getting a master's in? This stupid question. Is it a master's in powerlifting, or is there a much more scientific professional name for it?
So either kinesiology or exercise science. So I think they changed the name when I got into the program. They called it exercise science, but I think now they're changing it to kinesiology. But they're interchangeable.
Okay. And so I don't know if you can talk about this if they're clients, and if not, it's fine. What kind of athletes have you worked with? Is there a specific type, or is it like you said earlier, every athletes of every sport can benefit from it?
Definitely athletes from any sport can benefit from it. But what I find is that mostly powerlifters gravitate toward me just because I'm very involved with the community. So I work with a lot of I do powerlifting myself. And so I work with a lot of female powerlifters. And I've also, since I have experience working on a military base, I work with a lot of military. And the military is such a small community that when you're any good at anything you do, it kind of spreads through word of mouth. Yeah. So I'm glad I'm good and not bad, so that, you know, because either way it would spread.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Hey, this chick broke my back.
Yeah, and ironically too, like right as I was leaving my job at a military base, they started incorporating more power type training into their testing. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you've heard about the new ACFT, that they incorporate the deadlift. So it used to be just a run, sit-ups and push-ups, but now they're incorporating deadlifts, sled drags, leg tucks, like all these different things. And it's kind of cool because I got to see what it was like before it changed. Yeah. And I was always like, oh man, they should totally incorporate more strength stuff. And now they're doing it. Yeah. And so it gives me the opportunity to like play around and like see what works for them. So it's really cool.
How do you know that they didn't do it because of you?
Right? That's what I'm saying.
Are you, dude, Uncle Sam just almost spent $1 trillion on defense. I feel like you should be getting just a little smidgen of that. Just give me 1,000th of a percent. You retire cash forever. Yeah, seriously. No, that makes sense though, because yeah, I mean, is there not, what better example is there of functional strength in the military? I mean, obviously sports, but like, you know, on the lowest end, you'd have aesthetics where it's, so one of my friends was Mr. Bulgaria like 5 years ago. He literally looks like the Terminator. But yeah, it's all, you know, you got to have this lighting, you got to have these shorts, you got to have like oil, it's all about, you know, if you know, you got to eat like, it's like no water leading up to it, and then you got to load up on carbs so it sucks the remaining water in your mouth. But it's all about very much, you know, how can I look like Hercules for a small moment of time on stage? Has nothing to do with functionality. Not that they're not functional, but yeah, I guess that makes sense. Something like Navy SEALs or Marines or aren't like, yeah, it doesn't matter if they're, you know, if they've got cut up deltoids or triceps, like if you're being shot at, or, you know, if you don't, you know, if you're stranded in a jungle or a desert. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. You got to be able to move around. So kind of an oddball question. What's the funnest thing? Or I guess funniest thing? Is there anything in particular that's just like you wouldn't expect, that's just hilarious? Like I always ask that of people. Like one guy I had on operates drones for the Air Force, and I asked him what's the funniest thing, and he was not exactly PG, so I won't go there. But what's the funniest thing that you see in your field of work?
Funniest, well,
Just anything.
I don't know about funniest, but definitely it has to be at this point, after doing it for so long, family reactions to women who lift weights is just so bizarre to me, because people are always so worried that if women start working out, they're going to start looking like the Hulk. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah. But your son's been working out for 10 years and he doesn't even look like he works out. Why would you think that I would look like a dude after, you know?
6
so
months of
I think definitely, I think it hurts a lot of women's feelings, but I think that it's funny because it's so misguided. Yeah. You know, like I was telling someone was complaining of their, I think, mother-in-law, and I said, my mom had an intervention for me because she thought that protein powder was drugs. And so it's like, what are you going to do? Like, you're ruining your body as she's smoking her cigarette. Yeah. I love you, Mom. If you ever watch this, I love you so much. But I find it so funny that it's like, really, you sat me down with other members of our family and you're like, this protein powder needs to stop.
Lock the door.
Yeah, so it's just so silly.
Everyone reads a letter. Mel, I've known you since you were this tall, and I can't believe that. Yeah, dude, I remember in high school, probably when I was most into lifting, I remember I wanted to use muscle milk because it tasted good, and I remember I got it and I like hit it, and I like
have Fairlife here.
Yeah.
That's good.
I believe it. And it's not even the same house, but if you can see like a little door like that, it's like one of those little like storage things. I remember I was 17 and I hid a bottle of muscle milk. And I remember my mom found it, but it was like the same thing. She was like, what is this? And I was like, oh shit. Like, sorry. And I was like, Mom, look, you know, what their big advertising thing was. It's like mother's milk. Where it's they had all the branch chain, and my mom was like, no, this is the stuff that will rot your liver. This will burn out your kidneys. I was like, Mom, I'm sorry. Yeah, that is hilarious. You always see that with guys working out too. It's, you know, well, I don't want to get too big. I don't want to be bulky. And the analogy I always use is like, if you set out to build a house, you're not worried about accidentally building the Empire State Building. Like you're not worried. Okay, maybe you want to build a 2-story house. Maybe you put an attic in that you didn't want. But you don't build 102 stories with limestone bricks, like in steel girders. It doesn't happen by accident. You're not gonna accidentally put on 200 pounds of muscle.
Some federations test, some federations don't, and some federations have tested and untested divisions. Mm-hmm. So it just depends if you want to compete against people who don't use or supposedly don't use, you have the option. But you know, those, even for the federations that do test, they don't test everybody. So you can still be competing against people who are using and they're just not getting tested. And you know, there's always ways around. I mean, you saw Lance Armstrong. There's ways around it if people want to cheat bad enough. So you kind of never know. I mean, at the end of the day, we're not doing this for money. We're doing this for fun. Yeah. So there's not really a point in going into a tested federation and using. I think that's kind of crappy to do, but people do it. So I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like it would be harder with powerlifting because it's so, I mean, it's the laws of physics. You have this much. You have the ability to move to do this much work. You can only, you know, you're a pretty determined organism. Your muscle mass, what you can do, what physical work you can do, versus something like basketball where you could go in and just shoot lights out. Have you ever seen a case of someone like going in on like or I guess the equivalent of game day and just doing better than they've ever done by a long shot? Or is it pretty much like, because I feel like if you could somehow tap into like your adrenaline, I mean, you always hear stories of like old ladies like lifting over cars. You know, I feel like if you could somehow I don't know how you would do it, but if you could somehow tap into like life or death, like just like an epinephrine, norepinephrine, just wash. I mean, I feel like you could like deadlift like 2 tons. Is there any way of doing that, or is it pretty much like kind of determined?
I mean, for sure, I'm one of those people, and we purposely peak for our meets. So, but so it's called like overreach or super compensation, where you're basically fatiguing yourself. And then at the point where your body thinks you're going to put a really strong stimulus, it'll overcompensate by, trying to recover more. And then you remove that stimulus. So the recovery is going up, but the stimulus is going down. So the fatigue is dropping. And so if you time it right, you can actually perform significantly better than you would on any normal training day. And so there's a few things that go into that. One of them is just, there's studies done where people who compete just in general perform better during competition than during training because of the added stimulus. And there's something called the inverted U curve of excitability. Have you heard of that?
I have not.
Where, if you're not excited enough, you're bored, your training's not going to be very good. And if you're too excited, then your training also won't be good, or your performance won't be good. It'll be negatively impacted. So there's this peak of excitability where you're kind of anxious, nervous, excited, but you're not overexcited or over caffeinated, overstimulated. Okay. I'm sure if you've ever slammed a bunch of caffeine, where it's like you peak, and then after that, it's like, where am I? And everything's all. Yeah. So it's the same for athletic performance, where just the fact that you're in front of a crowd makes you nervous, anxious, adrenaline, all that stuff is flowing. And so you will perform better than you would if that stimulus was taken away from you. And people do things like ammonia inhalants. I don't know if you've seen that, but ammonia inhalants wake you up, make you focus, stop thinking, just go execute, and you perform really well. One of my best competitions, I deadlifted 330 for my singles as my heaviest singles leading up to my competition. I hate deadlifting. I refuse to do it. And so in competition, I think I opened with, I don't know, somewhere in the low 300s, like either 330 or 340, something like that. And I was like, I'm done. I don't want to do my second and third attempt. And Susan Salazar, one of the world record holding powerlifters and she's an IFBB pro. She was there and she's like, no, you can do another one. I'm like, oh my gosh, no, I can't. So she's like, I'm going to pick your attempt. She goes, she tells them my number. I pick it up like butter. It was 375. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. And she's like, no, we do another one. That was so easy. I was like, okay, but don't tell me what it is. So she goes, she tells them, and I pick it up again like nothing, 391. And that was my best deadlift to date. And I didn't even know how much I was lifting. Yeah. Because it's just that not only tapering and peaking, but being in that environment where you're like, okay, it's like life or death. Everybody's staring. You got to perform. Yeah. So you end up doing a lot better. At least I do. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. When I was in high school, I lived in Maine for a year, and I remember I did track, and it was like the only competition I did, but it was like a 400-meter relay, and I remember we were losing. I think we were in 4th place, and I sucked at it. But I remember the uniforms were so stupid, and I felt like such an idiot for wearing these flamboyant and I'm super white, so I was just like, I just remember people looking at me. I literally remember overhearing people being like, dude, look at that guy, because I just felt like an idiot. And that was the fastest I had ever run 100 meters, because I was like, I just want them to shut up. But yeah, it not nearly the same as what you just described, but I kind of get it. It's go time. Do you think it had anything to do with the fact that she was there, that you wanted to impress her, or do you think it's just more so, like you said, everyone's there, it's loud, it's it's go time, it's game day?
It's interesting you say that. You're the first person to mention that, but I think that she definitely had a role to play. And not so much I wanted to impress her, but I wanted to do right by her, because I wouldn't want her to be disappointed by the advice that she gave me. So I wanted to perform just so, I don't know, it's this type of like the support that you get, you want to kind of give back in a way too. It's kind of weird to say that because you're the competitor, you're not really doing anything for the person, but it makes people feel good to know that they helped you in a way too. And she actually, so it's powerlifting is kind of really niche. So if you don't know or you haven't seen what I'm talking about, it's going to sound so bizarre.
Go for it.
But we do this thing where like when you're getting up to go, and it has something to do with the adrenaline you're talking about, we do what's called trap slaps. So you'll slap the back of a person's, like literally their traps, just to get them in that fight or flight mode where, oh crap, I need to fight back. And so she gave me some solid slaps. Like she's super strong, right? World record holding powerlifter, bodybuilder. And she slaps me and I'm just like, holy crap, the world is spinning. And then I go up. And so it definitely had a lot to do with, and she also stood behind me. You're allowed to have a spotter. And she was yelling in my ear, and it that kind of stuff really helps with execution. Because and that's one of the reasons I compete in USPA. Somebody actually asked me on my Instagram why I compete in USPA. USPA is awesome about their rules. Like the rules are very competitor focused. So you can have spotters behind you. You can have loud music. You could have people yelling versus some other federations. They turn the music down. They like people to be quiet. And I think that hinders performance because they basically want to make it so that there's no distractions. And so to them, it's justified because they don't want, someone to yell and it throws you off. But to me, it's like when I'm competing in powerlifting, I want people yelling in my face. I want people to make me feel like I'm fighting for my life because, you know, you want to feel that energy. So I really like USP for that. And I really think it makes a huge difference. And it's been researched. I mean, if you have somebody giving you verbal or audio cues while you're performing, you're much likely to perform better. So there's like science behind it. It's not just someone saying, oh, I think I like it. So it definitely helps.
So I got to throw it back at you. If you said, if guys want to be my friends, just come up and grope me. So if you want people, if you need to perform, people need to come up and just slap you on the trap, just wham, just like, what's up, dude?
So it depends because there's some people, it's so funny too, because a lot of my friends and, like if I ask my friends, oh, can you slap me? Can you give me a trap slap? They'll have difficulty because they don't want to hurt you or hit you. Right. But there was this one time, and it sticks out to me because I asked one of my people, I'm like, give me a trap slap. I got the stupidest slap. I was like, no, I need to find a big dude and have him give me a good smack. And so I found a guy who does powerlifting, so he knew what I was talking about, and he nearly knocked me out. Like he hit me so hard, and I ended up pulling 390 for like 3 reps, which is more than I've ever done before. Because I was like, holy crap.
Dude, I wonder if...
It like deflects the pain that you feel other places because your body's vibrating. At least mine was. The dude was big and he hit me hard. So, but I had more respect for him after that, you know, because I was like, he treated me like a competitor, not like a chick, you know? I like that.
No, I get that. I mean, I'm not a powerlifter, so I don't get it. But I do get it. Like, would it work? So, is there a point where it goes too far, though? Could you get the wind knocked out of you? Could you, if you just keep scaling it up, like, what of my Terminator friend? Like, if he did it, I think that would legitimately, like, hurt me. Like, I don't think I would be able to do whatever I had to do after. Is that a concern? Or is it just keep going?
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think you definitely have to experience it so you know how much pressure and what someone can tolerate. Because the way you kind of make contact makes a difference. Like you don't want it to sting, but you want the pressure. So, if you know someone is like kind of experienced in that regard, you can trust them to do it appropriately without hurting you. And at the same time, you don't want you don't want to leave something to be desired, because then it's like, okay, I didn't get the effect that I wanted. But it's one of those things that's very gray, and you definitely don't want to hurt, and you definitely don't want to do it to someone that doesn't want you to do it.
Yeah.
Because some people don't like to be touched. But I'm just one of those people, like I can tolerate it, and I like it. I think it provides the right stimulus for me, because I don't like being touched, but in that circumstance, it gives me the right amount of focus that I need. So, but yeah, that's definitely a concern. But I have a question for you. So if you don't do powerlifting, how did you find me?
You know, there's
I always figure people are powerlifters when they come to my page. So
no, I think what it was is, it had something to do with Photoshop, because you had.
I remember that for sure.
Yeah, that's the. You know, I don't know. I think I follow like 4,000 people, and I think I know like 100 of them. So I think I'm someone that, like, if I go on YouTube and I watch any video that I enjoyed for even a millisecond, like, subscribe. Like, I just, you know, even if it's stuff that I know I'll never watch again. So that's honestly probably what it was. I had someone else on who was the same thing. I'm having a photographer on Saturday, and it was, he was like, "Where did you find me?" And I was like, "You know, I don't really know." So, yeah, no, there's no like sane answer to that. Like, I don't know. It's just one of those people where I just kind of realized one day, like, oh, I've seen their picture a lot, and then I did the Photoshop for you, and you put it up, and I was like, oh, that was cool. And I was just trying to find guests for my podcast. And I was like, do you want to do my podcast? The success rate is probably like 1 in 20. Most people will say, yes, or they just won't respond. And you were like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. So I was like, all right, cool, let's do it. But yeah, no, there's really no like sane, normal answer for that. I have no idea.
I mean, that's fair. You know,
Like,
I mean, I remember you because I thought that was a really cool Photoshop. So yeah, I reposted it and people loved it. So
Yeah.
I thought it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did the little retro thing.
Yeah, no, I threw it on, like, I found like a picture of the Great Depression. And I threw it over that because I remember you. What? Well, no, it was the Great Depression. So, God, it's very depressing. No, I'll find the picture for you that I used. But so it's like that guy by that like old timey, like, you know, Corella DeVille, like 101 Dalmatians car, and I think he's like right on Wall Street. So I cut your image out and I put it over that, but actually where I put your image behind it is actually a sign, and it's the guy selling his car. I said lost everything on like whatever. What was the Great Depression? Black Thursday. Lost everything in the crash. Like have two. It's actually really depressing. But I purposely I sized it right up so it just looked like you were this baller in like 1920s, 30s New York. Yeah, no, it's actually...
That sucks too, because it's like everybody's like, oh, I'm suffering from the depression, and here I am with my fur coat and my hair all done.
Hey, dude, no, I think it's probably... Because I guess the richest kind of got away from... If you look at the Great Depression, the tippy-top most richest, not to go into history, but like Astor, Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, they all made a ton of money off of it. So, I mean, I don't know. If you wanted to turn it into some like statement piece, you could it sounds a lot smarter than it was. In reality, it was just like, oh, I can do a quick Photoshop. No, I remember making that and I sent it to you, and then I remember thinking like, I've never talked to this person before, and I was like, oh man, this is probably going to be really creepy. Like, hey, I made this Photoshop, and I was like, oh god, why did I just do that? I wasn't even thinking. No, but you thought it was cool, so that was cool. Yeah,
it's so interesting you're saying that, because I have so many people who message me who are like, oh, you're probably never going to even read this, or you're never going to even respond, or you're never... And I'm just like, why do people think that? I don't get it. But then now that you say 1 in 20 people actually agrees to do your podcast, that makes sense. But I've had people literally like, hey, thank you so much for actually talking to me like a friend, because nobody talks to me. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of a jerk move. Like, why wouldn't you talk to a person literally took the time to do, for example, a Photoshop, or to say something nice, as long as it's respectful. I don't think there's a problem with being like, hey, thank you, I appreciate that, or hey, that was really cool. Sure. Or, you know, I can't talk, I'm busy, but, you know, keep in touch, whatever it is. as long as, there's, boundaries. Obviously, I get being a woman, you get bombarded sometimes. But at the same time, I think it's okay to be civil. I don't think you lose anything from it. Yeah. And, I think it's really cool because, I got to go on your podcast and, you get content for your stuff and I get to talk about my stuff. And I think it's a win-win. Yeah. So that doesn't happen if you ignore people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it probably helped that I have like a page full of Photoshops and I do a ton of Photoshop. I think it probably would have been weird otherwise. But no, I get it entirely. It's not weird. I mean, I've like people I have on this, they'll always say like, "Thanks for having me on, man." Like there's a guy I'm gonna have on later today who does it's like one of the leading like robotics engineers at NASA, like infinitely smarter than me. And I was like, yeah, dude, text me and let's work out a time. And he was like, oh, I'd love to do it. He's like, thank you so much for having me on. I was like, what are you talking about, dude? I was like, thank you for coming on. Like, I'm not Joe Rogan. I have 70 subscribers. Like, thank you for coming on. Yeah, that's what I say to people. I'm like, dude, you gave me an hour and a half of your day. Like, what are you talking about?
I think it's nice that people know that someone's interested in something that they care about, and I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah. So,
and one day when you have 1 million subscribers, they're going to be one of the first people who were on your show and they're going to be famous along with you. So,
yeah, that's how I sold it to like the first like 3 episodes I did with friends. No, I'm not kidding. Because I was like, I can't, because I was messaging people like you, just like, hey, we do my podcast, and I was like, hey, can I have a link? And I'd be like, I don't have any episodes. And there's just kind of, you can't really sell that. So I started texting friends, and I was like, hey, I need you to just come on and just fill space for an hour. I need to get like 5 episodes in so it actually looks legitimate. And they're like, why would I do that? And I'm like, one day when I'm famous, you can be episode 1. That's how I got the first guy. He was like, all right, I'll do it. Can't guarantee him anything yet, but no, but you hit the nail on the head. That I like having people on that are passionate about what they do. I don't want to just talk to anyone. I like people that light up when they talk about what they're doing. So, whenever I ask people to come on, they're like, well, what is it about? I'm like, dude, it's about, I had on an FBI agent. I had on a guy that worked for NASA, 2 people that worked for NASA. Today will be 3. I had on a guy that operates drones for the Air Force. I had on a guy last week that works for is an Israeli special ops soldier. Like, I told you, like, I want to have on my older cousin was an Army Ranger. Like, there's no, if you try to look at some common theme, it's not like, oh, this is political, or hey, we're going to talk about overcoming X, Y, and Z. I just want people on that are doing what they love. Like, there's a certain, I don't know, it's, so many people, they'll give you 1 of 2 answers. I hate my job, or how's your job? Well, I don't hate it, but no one's ever like, this is what I love. Like, this is what I love to do. And maybe that's why it's 1 in 20 people. Maybe most people just don't want to come on. But I try to I only message people that are like doing stuff they want to do. So, whether it's you in powerlifting, or whether it's like, I had a guy on last week that's an aviation photographer, literally like straps on like the back of a plane, has like a little bubble, and like shoots photos out of there. And he like asked me afterwards, he's like, why'd you have me on? I'm like, because you love what you do. That's why I want to have you on. So yeah, that's why I had you on. And that's, yeah, kind of talking in circles.
That's really cool. No, yeah, I get that. I was approached last year for a podcast interview by a woman named Heidi, and so she wanted me to go on for her. She does Future is Female Powerlifting, and she just had launched her podcast, and she asked me to be on, and I was so busy with my master's. I was in the middle of my semester, and then I think this was 2018. She reached out, and then a year later, she reached out to me again. Either a year or 6 months, a long time had passed, and I was in the middle of another semester, and I was like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And then I had gone to referee at a competition, and I think she came up to me, or I came up to her. I don't remember. She's like, are you Mel? And I was like, yeah. She's like, oh my gosh, like, I was the one who was just doing the podcast and stuff, and I was like, oh, what a small world.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I felt so bad. I was like, I'm so busy. I'm the type of person who will work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And I would work 8 if there was an 8th day.
Yeah.
And so like having that, and honestly, I know I have a kind of semi-large following on social media, but I don't like being behind the camera. I don't like being in the spotlight. I like focusing on my athletes. I like focusing on my work. So I don't like talking about me. And that was why I was kind of like, what are we talking
Yeah.
myself? Because I don't think, and this is going to sound kind of cold, but people don't care about what I do, maybe, right? So it's like I wanted to shift that focus from this is me, this is my life, to here's why my work is valuable.
Okay.
And this is the type of people that can use it.
Okay.
And I think when I realized that, you can still do that in these types of scenarios. You can make it about your work. Like you said, if you're passionate, you can talk about it, and it makes it less, I guess, nerve-wracking to be on, on a thing. But I actually linked up with her. I was like, hey, some guy asked me to do a podcast, and I would feel so bad if I didn't reach out to you first, because I don't want it to seem like I'm blowing you off. So we did one like a week or two ago, and she's going to post it like in a month. So yeah, when I first met her, she had barely any, and now she has like a whole bunch. So if people are into podcasts, listen to Futures Female Powerlifting, and she has a lot of different like fitness people on there. It's really cool.
Yeah. I was as you were telling that story, I was going to say, like, do you want me to like delay uploading this? You should reach out to her. I was like, I don't know, man. You don't want to turn her down twice and then pop up on this one and be like,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't want to be that person, because even though that wasn't my intention, you never know how people take it. But it turned out really well. So we did the podcast. It was awesome talking to her, and it was really fun. So that was kind of like a practice, but it was very different than this.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah.
So, but it's very cool. So with her, I got to talk about like my research and stuff like that. But I do want to say, for the thousands of subscribers that are going to be on here at some point, if y'all want to get into powerlifting, visit www.teampowerlifting.com. It's my webpage. It's not just me who's coaching. I have, one of my coaches who works for A-Team. She's really good with habit coaching, with nutrition, with mindset, with weight loss, general training. So even if you're not into the weights, if you want to work on your diet, she can help you out. Wade Johnson, who coached me for my last competition, he works for A-Team too. He has his own coaching, but he also works with us. He does strongman, Olympic lifting. He's one of the world's, he has like world records, I believe, in both sports, for powerlifting and strongman.
Oh, damn.
And he used to do Olympic lifting. I don't know if he does it anymore, but great guy, great people. So we have all sorts of people who coach different niche sports. So anybody who's interested, we're still taking people on. So,
dude, yeah, I'll put your website in the video description and stuff. I won't leave you hanging. Okay, now I have to ask you, for, I guess, because we're coming up on an hour. You said you started your company, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And is obviously successful now. Give me a walkthrough on what it was like to first, and it doesn't have to be long, first start. The basic, because I'm starting this and I want this to succeed, and it is terrifying, because it's, like I said, like you, I have a degree in biology. I got into medical school in Miami, and it's kind of like, you're doing a podcast now, and there's just sort of like, it's what I really want to do, and I know it can work. It just like 4 years before I applied to med school, I was like, I know it can work if I start getting A's now, doing research now, shadowing doctors now. I know it can work, but I had to, it sounds cheesy, but like I had to see it for myself, even if no one else could see it. you're someone, so you started your company, you said in 2015?
Yeah, so I went independent in 2015. And so my business is probably my favorite thing to talk about because it's my baby. And
Of course, I forget to bring it up until now. All right.
No, it's fine. I just never know if other people want to hear about it, but
Dude, I want to hear about it. Tell me.
What was it?
I said, I want to hear about it. Tell me.
It's been such a fun ride, and I would have never, ever in a million years expected to have it be as successful as quickly as it had.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, there's so much that goes into building a business from the ground up, and I had no help from anybody. So everything I did 100% by myself. And I actually do business coaching now for people who are in the fitness industry because I had a lot of people come to me and ask me, like, for example, hey, I want to become a personal trainer. How do I do it? I want to be an online coach. How do I do it? And Stephanie, who works for A-Team, my company, she started out as a client of mine. And then she was one of the people who came up to me and said, I want to do personal training. How do I do it? And I walked her through. She was a trainer for a little while. And then I asked her, hey, do you want to do online coaching with us? Because I thought she was she was on top of it. Like as a client, she was really good and she was always responsive and on point. So I really liked that. And so I offered that to her, and she was willing to intern. And I was like, no, I'm going to pay you because I really appreciate the work and I understand how hard it can be. So, but not to get so far into that, how I started, I was a personal trainer for a long time. And then when I went and I moved to New York when I was working on a military installation. So when I moved from LA to New York, my clients in LA were like, what are we supposed to do? And I couldn't find a replacement because there are so many trainers in LA, but trainers unfortunately have a bad track record of either flaking or being unreliable, or their specialty wasn't powerlifting, or the price was just, not in the range. So I offered to write training programs and just send it via email. And I said, send me back your videos. And so that worked out really well. And then through word of mouth I actually worked for free for a long time, building my skills as a communicator via email, because it's very different explaining to someone with words versus being able to be like, no, move this way, guide them with your hands. And so, to practice, I said, hey, I'll coach you guys for free. And people took me on, and 2 of the 3 people that I first took on continued with me. And then one of those 3 is still with me today.
Oh, damn.
And so from those people, it started with, word of mouth, people saying, who's your coach? And me kind of building it that way. And then just working, like, honestly, if you ask my clients have seen it firsthand, where we've done trips together. Last year was our first trip in July. We all from all over the country met up in Nashville to compete together. And the entire time I was on my laptop working while we were there. Yeah. I would sit each one of them down and go through their stuff. And that's been my life. My life has been waking up in the morning, working, and then all the way until I go to bed at night. And so I think I'm of the mind where if you work really, really, really hard every day, put in the time, put in the effort, take rejection, because I've gotten rejected more than I can tell you. And that's probably why I don't like rejecting people when they reach out to me, when they need help, when they want to build their business, when they want to talk to me. I try to be there as much as I can. I don't like thinking in a scarcity mentality where if I help you, I'm not going to get a client, because I would rather give a client and have 3 than not have one. So I don't have any either, because, and people are like that. It's like, they give the example, if you give an egg from your chicken coop, you can have a cake, but you don't want to give your egg, so you don't get a piece of the cake. Yeah. It's like that. I really think there's like 7 billion people in the world. There's plenty of clients to go around. Why would you not want to support other people who are in even your same industry? Do you really think you're dipping into the same pond?
Yeah.
Do you really think you're not unique enough?
Yeah.
You can't stand out, and so you're worried, and so you don't want to help anyone? I really think that limits you. And part of, I think, why I feel I've been successful is because I have never been scared to be friends with people who do what I do, because I know what makes me unique. And I would rather support people. And even if I don't do as well, that's not my ultimate goal. Isn't to make X amount of money. I don't care about that. My ultimate goal is get people strong, enjoy the sport, enjoy my life, create services that people love, make friends. And if my ultimate goal was make the most amount of money and make sure to squish everyone on the way up, because I don't want them to dull my shine, I think that's the wrong attitude to have. Part of powerlifting, what makes it an awesome community, is the fact that people support each other. And so part of that support is, hey, you might have to give up a client, or you might have to take your client and say, hey, that's not my specialty. You should go with my friend, whoever it is, and it's their specialty, and not be worried that all of your clients are going to leave you. If you provide a good service, you have good intentions, and you do your job the way you should, you're going to get your clients. So I think that's kind of the bottom line for me, and why A-Team has done so well is because if you're caring and compassionate, you're not gonna do poorly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that entirely. There's some people that don't like they embrace the idea of the zero-sum game. If I help you, that's taking from me. And it's, first of all, that's not always the case. And second of all, if that is the case, that's not always bad. Like, it's what you said. But you also said, to go back to it, said you wake up in the morning and it's what you're doing till you go to sleep. That's what I did in college to get into medical school, and I hated it. That's what I do with this podcast. It may not look like it, but it's what I do all day. Mostly, hey, would you like to do my podcast? Okay, no. Would you like to do my, no, okay. But I almost find that's what I like to do more than anything else. Like, when you find the thing that you love, and right now the thing that's fueling me is like the dream of turning into a business. Like, you've actually done it. I can't even imagine what it's like to actually turn it into a thing that puts food on the table. Like, so I'm not even making anything off this yet. I will gladly take any sponsorships from anyone. But it's just what I do all day, and it's like I don't want to do anything else. And that's what you said. You said you wake up and you go till you go to sleep, and that's all. If you could work 8 days a week, you would. But I think if most people could have that opportunity, they would. But they're doing stuff that they don't want to do, so they don't. It's not really a question. I don't know what I'm saying, but
no, I completely understand, because life gets in the way, right? You have bills, you have family, you have other things that you need to focus on. And for the large portion, because like I said, I worked for free at first, so there, I still have to pay my bills. And I worked a 9 to 5 to just have a base income, and everything I did in addition to that was just, I didn't even consider that really my income. And, at a certain point I was waking up, and I never thought I would completely go online, because right now my business is purely online. I hardly work with people in person. My work was mainly personal training for the bulk of when I was doing this. And I would wake up and I would go to service clients from about 5:30 in the morning until 7:30 or 8 a.m. or 7:30, and then I'd go to work from 8 or 9, go home at lunch to make lunch and dinner. I'd meal prep during my lunch break, and I had to let my dogs out. Yeah. And then I would go back to work until 5, get off, go to the gym at 5:30 or 6, service clients until 8. And this was my life every day. So I would do 4 hours of personal training most days of the week, and the rest 8 hours was my regular work. And then I would do my online coaching at night. I would be on my phone, looking at emails, responding. Sundays, I would spend all day writing programs. So 12 to 14 hours do laundry in between, meal prep in between, whatever I needed to do. And that was basically my life. And on weekends, I even would book some promotional events. So I worked for Coca-Cola. I worked for some supplement companies for MMA events, stuff like that. And that helped me pay the bills while I was growing my business. And I told myself, I'm never going to quit my day job on my side gig, which was personal training and coaching, as I'm doing for my day job. Once that happened, and that happened faster, I wasn't making very much money, I'll be honest. But once that happened, you know, I was like, okay, I'm making equivalent money. If I quit my job, I'll be making half as much, but there's room for me to work more during that day, during that time. And that was when I transitioned into personal training and coaching mainly. That was 2016-ish. And then by 2018, by the beginning of 2018, I completely stopped personal training, focused purely on coaching. And I was getting, at that time, so much business that I had to turn it away. And so I ended up stupidly saying, oh, I should do a master's program since I'm so busy.
Logical.
And that was I'm insane. Sometimes I question my sanity, but when I say work from morning to night, I don't just mean on what I love. It's, you have to do what you have to do to survive. And part of that is you have to work a job that you might not necessarily like, to pay the bills. And then your free time where you're typically watching TV, which now I watch a ton of TV now. I used to not watch very much TV because I was working. I didn't have time. So maybe when I was folding laundry, I might watch a show, but like all the time that we spend doing BS, which is like fooling around on the computer, on your phone, on Instagram, on Netflix, on whatever, that's a choice you're making. You're choosing not to invest in your passion, and you're choosing to invest in your entertainment. And so when you do that, you're taking away from what you can be building. Like, I've had 10 years of like so much work that I didn't even realize that I was taking away from my family. I was taking away from my friends. I was taking away from everything because it meant so much to me. But you have to make sacrifices. One of the questions I got on my Instagram for, you know, I did a little poll. What would you like to hear about? And someone said, how do you balance powerlifting and family? And for me, powerlifting was never the issue because powerlifting was a few hours a week. But what about my work that's 14 hours a day, and I'm too tired to have a conversation with people that I love? That's been the struggle for myself. My relationships I've been sacrificing that because I haven't prioritized them. So like all of that goes into how much does it mean to you? Do you really want to build, like, you know, if one of my clients, she's so funny, she's like, are you building an empire? You have so many clients now. And really, it gave me so much gratification. It was almost like addiction to service, you know, addiction to building processes and fine-tuning your systems and all that stuff. It really, you know, it's habit forming. So
but when it's when it's what you love and it's what you're working towards, you don't really, at least in my experience, like in college, like I was never like a good student ever in my life, and I my second year of college, I was like, I have to get straight A's to get into med school. And it's, I mean, like you're saying, your client said you're on your computer. Dude, I used to walk between classes on UGA's campus with my phone, and I just, in between courses, even if it was 5 minutes, I'd be going over organic chemistry slides. Just what can I do, you know, for Christmas break, I would do Christmas, and then I would go upstairs at like my aunt's house and earplugs, and I'd be doing exam crackers. I'd be doing physics questions. And looking back at it, it was a lot of work, but I kept a journal in college because I knew one day I'd want to like look back at what I thought. Because when you look back at your memories and you try to remember things, you're looking at it through where you are now. And so I was like, I want to see where. And most of it I read, I'm like, oh my god, it's just there's nothing profound at all. Oh, there's some, but mostly I'm just like, oh, you're so dumb. But one of the things was like, you know, like I can hear all my friends like downstairs drinking, and like they're calling my name, and like, but I really want to get an A in this class because like 1% of people get A's, and like I want to do that. And like, am I sacrificing friendships? Am I sacrificing? And for a while I told myself I wasn't, and then I finally admitted that I was, and then I finally admitted I was, and that I was okay with it. Not because I didn't like love them, and you know, if I could have my cake and eat it, I would. Like I would, you know, if I could be in perfect shape and also go to Golden Corral every night, if I could drink all night and hang out with friends and also work on my podcast, I would have it all. Who wouldn't? But it was I finally admitted to myself, like, yes, I am sacrificing and it's not because like I love them any less, or it's not because I don't want to, you know, go out drinking with them any less. I think you only know, and you know, it sounds so snobby, but it's like you only know it if you're really pursuing something with like your body and soul. Like there's a gratification from it that you really can't understand outside of it. And it's exactly what you said. It's you won't know until you're doing it, but it's like it really is. I mean, it's your baby. You're constructing this thing, and no one else can see it but you. And even though it's just a little bit, into anyone else on the outside, it just looks like chaotic. Like, oh, this person's a workaholic, like, or they just, you know, they're refusing everyone. But that's not what it is. It's like you see this like coloring book that no one else can see, and it's going to take you 10 years to fill it in. But if you fill it all in, it's going to be better than the Sistine Chapel. But no one else can see it but you. So all everyone else sees is just this person that's just coloring all day. And they're like, I would love to hang out with you. It's not that I don't love you. Like, I got to color in this part. And it's not until the thing forms that, yeah.
I mean, most of the people who are around won't even see it. It's mostly going to be the people who care the most about you, who are trying to spend time with you, who are going to be affected by it. Yeah. Most people who know me casually, locally or whatever, probably don't even really think I work. They think that I don't know, probably spend my parents' money or come from a wealthy family or something like that. Or, and I've heard all that before, where people are like, well, who's paying for your car? Who's paying for this or that? Or you know, there's all kinds of things that people, being a woman especially, all kinds of things I've heard from family even, where people think what I do is a joke because they don't understand it mostly. So people from the outside, especially when you work from home, they don't consider it a real job for some reason. I don't get it. And they don't take it seriously, but it's up to you to kind of fight against those preconceived notions. Like I feel like I'm confident enough in what I do that I think it's funny when people make those assumptions. I go with it, or I troll them, and I'm like, oh yeah, I just sit at home and I get my stuff paid for, and I'm doing it. Yeah. I'm like eating hot Cheetos and like lounging with my dogs. Yeah. So I don't care, but I can definitely see where it would be disheartening when you put so much work into something, because working, 12, 14-hour days consecutively for years breaks you down. Like, regardless of whether you love it or not, you're physically and mentally tired. Yeah. And I've gotten very emotional at certain times because of just exhaustion. Yes. And when someone looks at you and they're like, oh, you're so cute, like your little work that you do that makes you so they're condescending because they don't understand. And it's like, you kind of have to take that with it. And I think that's something you might struggle with too, with a podcast, is someone sees it, they're like, oh, what's a podcast and all that. where you have to kind of, they're like, oh, you could have gone to med school and all you did was a podcast. Like, all I did was a podcast. Look at what all these cool people that I've talked to.
Yeah.
Have you ever even had a conversation with someone outside of your farm that you live on?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, what the heck? Like, how can you be condescending toward a person when you don't understand what they're doing or what they're going through?
Yeah.
You know, so I think small business owners, you know, that's what we're battling. Online business owners, that's what we're battling, you know. And I don't know how much of it that you feel, you know, my boyfriend calls me a feminist, saying these things, but like, I feel like women struggle because there's a perception.
Yeah.
I know I do, you know, like people saying, oh, you're just waiting for someone to come and swoop you off your feet and marry you and provide for you. And I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
How does that even cross your mind? Yeah. Like, how is that, you know?
You need you a strong man to give you everything. It's like, wait, what? What? Yeah, no, I was going to say, the same people that are condescending are the same people that think that if they power lift one day a week, they're going to look like Hulk. So, you know, take it all with a grain of salt, because they don't seem to have a pretty good grasp on it. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Definitely. I think the ignorance does go hand in hand.
Yeah.
It's like without asking questions, they make assumptions.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. If there are people that think lifting one day a week is going to make them look like Jay Cutler, and then in the same breath, they put down your business, don't sweat it. Yeah. All right, dude. Well, it's been an hour and 15 minutes. So thank you very much for coming on. I hope you enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it as yet another interesting person to talk to. Yeah, dude, more than anything, thank you very much for taking time out of your day. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate being on here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, dude. Well, on Instagram, send me a link to your website, and I'll put it in the video description.
Okay, for sure.
All right.
I'll do that.
All right. Thank you very much.
Have a good one.
You too.
Thanks.
Peace.
Bye.